If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address.
They don't let us get away with bullshit. The white folks can talk all day long. And everybody believes it. The complexion for the protection.
Have you noticed that suddenly these white supremacists are the biggest defenders of a disease that most of them have ridiculed mercilessly for decades, and most of them can't even spell it? Well, it's because, as I've always taught you, nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. What you allow one racist to get away with today, they'll all be doing tomorrow. That's how Jim Crow started. It was originally supposed to be a joke, but it didn't stay a joke for very long, now did it? This ploy of trying to take the next anti-black onslaught and cloak it as being harmless or otherwise minimizing it, that's something these white supremacists have done for generations. And this stunt at the BAFTA is no exception. As soon as it occurred, there was a tsunami of white racists who immediately came surging in like a flood of feces, saying all their old racist talking points. They weren't defending this John Davidson creep. They didn't even know his name. They were all sticking strictly to defending his use of an anti-black slur the same way they have with literally every anti-black act of racism that's ever occurred. They are the cavemen who cried wolf. They constantly demand that no act of anti-black racism, no matter how egregious or lethal, ever be punished. And then they try to claim to be victims because people demand that they have basic manners. Clearly, they have a disability that prevents them from being capable of common decency. So the racists are the main ones responsible for making sure people recognize this stunt for what it really was. Keep in mind, these white supremacists are the same trash who always say that the N-word is just a word, it doesn't have any power, you people are just making that up. And then as soon as this event happened, what was these racists' response to it? Did these bigots say, yawn, nothing to see here, the N-word is meaningless, we're over it? Or did every single one of these scumbags begin saying it was hilarious, and they began having fun with it, and they started making jokes about it? And these clowns who want to try to say that we're in the wrong, notice how none of these people is in their feelings when these white supremacists are openly mocking Tourette's. This is because they think their alleged mental disease means that they found a comfortable place under white supremacy, because now they can try to identify as something other than black. Fill in the blank, anything will do. So obviously they're lying because the white supremacists, that's what they do, but they're also congenital idiots. We can blame those Neanderthal genes for that, so they're incapable of realizing a little concept called truth. These racists would love to confine this event to that one night and that one racial slur spoken, but they always tell some lie to excuse away every racial slur and incident of anti-black racism. There's always some excuse. So-and-so is old, or he doesn't know any better, he's from a different generation, or so-and-so didn't mean it, affluenza, they've got black friends. There is always some talking point or other that they try to use and always have. This time around, the lie du jour is Tourette's. If this was truly only about Tourette's, then why is it that literally every one of these so-called defenders of John Davidson, they're all saying black people need to stop getting offended at someone saying the N-word? Wait, I thought this was about spreading understanding for a mental disease, not about accepting racist slurs into society in general. But that's exactly what happens when you're a Neo-Neanderthal. Your small brain presses up against the front of your sloped forehead and impairs your basic cognitive functions, if you have any. So like a caveman, you repeat the same primitive gruntings over and over. They're so stupid they can't even hide their true motives long enough to push their phony talking points. The entire reason that nobody, and I mean no freaking body, is buying the phony we have to have sympathy for Tourette's talking point is because when we look at the people saying this, we don't see them showing any sympathy or concern for this racist John Davidson or anybody else with Tourette's. All we see is these same people smiling and laughing and saying how hilarious this all is. None of these pretend phony sympathizers has voiced even a scintilla of concern for people with Tourette's. They're just using it as more fodder for their half-brain culture war BS. Because this was never about accommodating someone with a mental disorder. This is always about accommodating anti-black racism. That's the reason why these morons are looking around and wondering, how come nobody cares that he has Tourette's? Well, that's because these racists don't care. With friends like them, who needs to be ableist? They're telling the racist lies as if they think we haven't heard these same talking points before, for over a century, when this is the only thing we've ever heard from these anti-black racists. They just sit around telling each other these asinine lies, and they think that because it plays so well among their circle of inbred primates that it also works elsewhere. And they're finding out the hard way it doesn't. That's why they're so angry right now, and it shows. In fact, they're so angry at the pushback that they've gotten from foundational black Americans that we've pierced their lies and we're not tolerating it. These guys have decided to just take off the mask altogether, put aside all pretense, and say what they really think.
To be clear, like, it's an ugly word. I understand it's an ugly word. I never use it myself. I don't like hearing people use it, but it also isn't magic, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like there is no magic. And again, actually, I'm going to cite John McWhorter and saying, like, we had a healthier attitude towards this in the 90s, where, for example, you could read the N-word in Huck Finn, and you would read it out loud as part of, like, reading this literature, or you could have a panel in which you would quote somebody saying this, right? And nobody had a fit over it. The fact that we've turned it into it.
This is trash, bending over backwards to call basic civility oppressive. These are savages who cannot be civilized. She claims that the N-word isn't magic. Well, there's a difference between a word being magic and a word having meaning. And this Inez Stepman character, she works for a few of these right-wing think tanks, of course. In her case, she contributes propaganda to toilets like the Claremont Institute. She also scribbles her brain rot for the Federalist, another right-wing online rag. And, of course, no circle of stupid would be complete without the Manhattan Institute, where she smears her mental feces on the walls alongside other trash like Chris Rufo. She's also Jewish. I have to wonder where Juliana Margulies and Michael Rappaport are at. Predictably, the same person who claims that the N-word isn't magic and that society has to get back to a normal place of being able to hurl anti-black slurs with impunity, she lost what passes for her mind when Palestinians merely said, "Free Palestine." She and Rufo whined online about campus protests against the genocide in Gaza. So the words colonization were magic for this racist little white woman. She's heard that word all of her life, certainly heard it before October 7th, and yet she doesn't want to return to a world where words like colonization and genocide were freely expressed on college campuses without hypersensitive racists such as herself clutching their pearls and fainting. Tell this piece of trash genocide is just a word, that it has no magic powers. Nobody ever died because they merely heard the word genocide, and it just goes to show how the interests and phobias of a foreign government are put on a pedestal that entire schools are attacked, financially, politically, and even physically laid siege to merely because students said a word. We need these snowflake racists like this Stepman woman to grow up. Stop being a frightened Neanderthal primitive in the cave and being afraid of sounds she doesn't recognize, like colonization and genocide and decency. Now understand, if you got a clown like this who actually has the nerve to name drop John McWhorter, that's how you know that this person is brain dead. John McWhorter, by the way, is also another employee of the Manhattan Institute, which, as I pointed out, posts online this racist garbage from City Journal that she scribbles her writings for. And John McWhorter, he's an employee there, and you can see what his job is. His job is to be their black crash dummy. Hey, we can go ahead and point to our coworker here. He says it's not a problem. He says it was much better before when you could just throw the N-word around casually. Yeah, because one John McWhorter who goes ahead and co-signs all of this anti-black nonsense, that matters more than the 50 million black Americans who'll take your head off if you do. Gee, I gotta wonder, what color is the sky in this woman's world? Most likely white. And keep in mind, she claims that in the 1990s, people weren't getting all hysterical about it. You could read the N-word in Huck Finn and nobody had a problem with it.
Again, actually, I'm going to cite John McWhorter and saying, like, we had a healthier attitude towards this in the 90s, where, for example, you could read the N-word in Huck Finn.
In fact, the objections to Huckleberry Finn from black people started after the Civil Rights Movement. As early as 1957, the NAACP was calling this book out, saying that it was unfit for children, and they were calling out all the racial slurs and the belittling racial designations, all the things that white people like this Shepman woman love about it. So this is decades before the 1990s, and it continued from the 50s. It didn't stop there. These objections from black Americans continued into the 1970s, and it started to gain steam in the 1980s. You even had articles in the Washington Post about black people who were basically saying that this book needs to be called out, or at the very least it doesn't deserve some sort of exalted place in American literature. So this is like 10 to 20 years before the 1990s. It's been going on for decades, but apparently the geniuses over at the Manhattan Institute, who never miss a chance to be wrong, they didn't know that. We can add that to the mountain of things these mental midgets don't know. This is what their think tanks do. They sit here and try to rewrite history. Well, when you don't know history to begin with, I guess that does become an easier process. But this is what she quotes John McWhorter as having scribbled, that in the 1990s, we were more enlightened. There wasn't this knee-jerk reaction. And you notice how neither of the other two half-wits actually said anything about it. She doesn't know or doesn't care, and neither do they. This is not about facts. It's not about truth. It's about white confirmation bias. Just go ahead and reinforce the idiocy that we already believe. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to be something that we like to hear. These people are afactual, ahistorical a-holes. And of course, she declares, we just need to move on.
The guy has a disease. Okay, awkward, move on.
These are not the words of people who are confidently basking in the glow of having won a victory on their own terms and having it all their own way. What they're doing is exactly the opposite. They're furious at us because we beat them. Again. And worse than that, they're the dominant society. It's their award shows, their media, their society in which they're the majority, and yet they're getting dragged from can't see in the morning till can't see at night by the very people they spent centuries attacking and oppressing. This was supposed to be them just throwing their racism in our faces. Instead, it's become yet another high-profile beatdown for them. Black Americans were the ones that they were trying to defeat. They thought we would back down because the Afro-Britons have always allowed themselves to be publicly disrespected and humiliated, and then have the nerve to talk trash to foundational Black Americans. See, the problem is we're built differently. Anti-Black racism is a victimless crime in Britain because the Black population there is cowed and they lack pride and self-respect. On the other hand, anti-Black racism in the U.S. is a capital offense, and there is no appeal. White society attempted to bestow absolution on themselves. So we got the morons from the racist peanut gallery giving us their asinine opinions, and we all become less intelligent for hearing their gibberish. White racists who thought that this was going to be a breakthrough moment for making open, blatant anti-Black slurs normal, and this was going to push the envelope and give them all kinds of leeway that they didn't have before. See, under white supremacy, this is how you move the so-called Overton window. The way it works is something is shocking the first time they do it, noteworthy the second time, and no big deal the third. But the first step is to be daring enough for some racist to do it the first time, because that's always the hardest. Now, the first thing to remember about these people is that these are white supremacists. These are racist ideologues who just copy and paste the same old talking points no matter what. What really makes the bastards furious is that foundational Black Americans never let them get away with it. When they do racist stuff in our faces, we make the bastards pay a price for it. These racists aren't trying to play victim, they're trying to play dumb. And they want to test whether if they lie long enough, will you be silly enough to play dumb along with them. The racists are trying to paint their own reality because that's how they assure themselves that their world won't come to an end tomorrow. White supremacy made a devil's bargain with those classified as white, and the guarantee was that their place in the society would never change. But white privilege and white primacy are both lies. It's all a house of cards, and the people inside that house know it. So they need white power to frequently reassure them that the status quo is in no danger of changing, that the house of cards is in no danger of falling. And that's where these displays of open anti-Black racism come in, because this is the social proof that those who rely on white privilege demand to see, so they can be reassured that white power won't be collapsing, at least not today. The problem is foundational Black Americans are out here like the big black wolf threatening to blow their house of cards down. We are the only threat to white supremacy. We know it, these Black immigrants know it, and these white supremacists definitely know it. They live in fear of genetic annihilation, fear of having to see a world that doesn't center them anymore, and most of all, fear of competition. This was what white supremacy promised them that they would never have to do, and this insecurity drives practically all of their demonic behavior. The white supremacist is the lowest of moral perverts. They're celebrating and having a laugh about the BAFTAs for the same reason these animals celebrate unarmed Black people being murdered by police, because in their warped minds, this is the only instance where they can feel like they won, even if only for a moment. And then Black people keep showing them that they've won nothing. Everyone could see exactly what the phony sympathy from these racists was about. It was about them doing another of their putrid anti-Black games, where they support anyone who says racist garbage against us. If John Davidson had yelled out some slur at white people, or said white people should all die, or said white people are just trash, they would be calling for him to be banned from society. And isn't it interesting that of all the things that scumbag decided to blurt out accidentally, he didn't say anything that would be offensive to white people, nothing that was going to be an anti-white slur. He didn't say anything anti-Semitic. So that's how you know this stuff is not just coming from some spontaneous place. There is clearly contemplation that goes behind it, and we're not going to let somebody lie to us and say, oh, well, now we're going to have a socially sanctioned disease that allows you to spout all kinds of bigoted gibberish and nobody's going to say anything about it. Now, speaking of people trying to push that lie, that brings us to the next point. These online clowns who are trying to please their mostly white audiences by backing up these lies. One of them is a name you'll recognize from one of my earlier videos on this subject, Sweet Anita. I have no idea who she was before last week, and if you heard me mention her before, it's when I was debunking the lies told by some other wannabe online influencer. And just to show these clowns all operate out of the same playbook, Sweet Anita also claims to be biracial.
My dad is black. My grandma's from Trinidad. Half my family is black.
So her spouting the N-word couldn't possibly be racist. Notice how the only time these idiots ever mention that they have any sort of black ancestry is to protect white racism against black people. They act as a rubber stamp for these racists, and they know it. That's their job. That's how they make their daily bread. They know exactly what the game is, and they love to play it. So we have a certified tether here, is what this Sweet Anita character is. Creep Anita is what I ought to call her. She went on to white-splain just like all the other liars and to lecture black people that we can't be offended and that we have no right to do anything other than embrace and love this racist puke Davidson. And then she tripled down on stupid by saying that anyone who's objecting to it is just feigning outrage. That's what she said. She actually had the nerve to say that.
So people are really desperate to misunderstand how Tourette's works because it gets them a lot of engagement to rage bait and feign outrage about the situation.
So she's saying that all of these people who are raising hell about this, why, they're just making it up. They're not really offended. They're just feigning offense. See, when you're totally dependent on the dominant society for every crumb of your daily bread, these are the kind of lies you have to tell. And this is what makes these tethers and these intersectional fools so dangerous. These people will sit here and deliberately give a pass and go ahead and give support to anti-black racism. And then you wonder why trash like Dylan Roof, after he murders a church full of black grandmothers, you got some people saying, well, he's got a black friend. I'm not sure if that was racial. That's what the game always is. Because once you allow one of these liars to excuse anti-black words, next thing you know, you have black people being physically attacked in public and then being murdered. That's what this is all meant to create a lane for. And the people saying this mess know it. Far as they're concerned, they'll gladly see black people being harmed or even killed, so long as they can get a few crumbs off a mass's table. She's trying to please an overwhelmingly white audience. That's who she wants to appeal to, and she'll mention the little melanin she allegedly has as a way to bestow blanket amnesty on them for being racist. How many times has she invoked her non-black ancestry as a way to tell all these other non-black people, you need to shut up and be quiet when black people tell you something. You can't object. Why, I've got some non-black ancestry and that gives me carte blanche to tell you. Of course she doesn't do that. She basically says she's their online black friend. They can go ahead and mention her whenever they need permission to be racist because that's what she's there for. That's what garbage like Creep Anita are marketing. They're marketing themselves as being crash dummies for white supremacy. And just like the rest of them, she doesn't know anything about John Davidson, hasn't seen the so-called flick about him, and she gives a blink and you'll miss it mention to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo. So her consideration for them, that was the only thing that was being faked. But the stupidity was 100% genuine. She also lied and claimed that she was canceled. I pointed out to you that never happened.
I went into a whole video of how I developed the N-word tic, how it deeply affected my life, and the overall response from the public around it. And you can check that video out.
She was merely criticized, but she never paid any sort of price for her behavior.
When I had the N-word tic, I had it for quite a while, and I'm a live streamer.
Now, did you catch what she just said? Let me let you hear it again.
When I had the N-word tic, I had it for quite a while, and I'm a live streamer.
She said I had, past tense, had the N-word tick.
When I had the N-word tick.
And had it for a long time, but not anymore.
I had it for quite a while.
That's what she just said. Oh, so the N-word tick is not some, first of all, permanent condition, and second of all, apparently you can get rid of it, because she did. She doesn't have it anymore by her own admission.
When I had the N-word tick, I had it for quite a while.
Oh, I had it, but not anymore. Any black person who plays along with this lie that, oh, these people have no control over this, I mean, it's just totally out of their hands, there's just nothing they can do. You're a fool and a moron if you actually go along with it. They're sitting here literally telling you to your face, oh yeah, this is all just a game. Well, I had it, but not anymore because it was getting in the way of some of my online revenues. It was threatening my cash, so I had to let it go. She's one of these people who uses Tourette's as a get-out-of-accountability free card. If this behavior isn't deliberate, then you better apologize to people when you do it, otherwise common sense says you meant to do it. It's not the job of society to read your mind or to know your life story. Society has rules, and if you want to be a part of it, you better get used to following those rules. And rule number 1 is you are responsible for what you say. And if you're one of these geniuses who's decided, well, I'm not responsible for what I say, then you'll have no leg to stand on if you try to hold other people responsible for what they do. You can't dictate how people react to your behavior. You can only try to mitigate it. And if you're stupid and act like, well, I don't have to explain anything because I'm tired of explaining it, then you'll learn to be motivated to explain it if they do something. But one way or the other, you will be explaining your behavior. So the so-called support for this racist Davidson character is phony and fake, and the people pretending to care about Tourette's are liars. This is just more anti-black performative extremism. For example, over in Britain, one of their morning shows was repeating the same old pathetic lies we've heard before, and they had this Indian-looking woman who was doing the most to say that this entire controversy was just, as she put it, an American take.
But it's a very American take. It's a very specifically American take.
And she regurgitated all the talking points we've heard before, because this John Davidson character is a well-known figure in Britain, don't you know? And she herself respects him greatly. Why? Everybody knows that John Davidson's not a racist, and after all, empty-headed people like her are far more informed about Tourette's than the clueless black Americans who are causing such a fuss about it with their American takes. In fact, like the rest of John Davidson's cheerleaders, they consider this creep to be such a well-known national treasure, and like this woman, they are all so well informed about him that she can't even remember his name.
I completely forgot his name. Davidson be held responsible for this.
Well, I guess this is how revered the national treasure is, huh? This is a pack of liars pathetically trying to pretend as if they care about this clown's alleged ailment. They're all acting, all pretending. All they care about is giving themselves cover, however feeble, to get away with open anti-black racism. And any lie will do. As you see, she struggled to try to find his name on the article in front of her. She didn't even know his name. She herself admitted she couldn't remember his name. But you know, that seems to be a running theme with these people who call themselves wagging their fingers at us.
That it happened in public in front of that entire crowd, specifically to Michael B. Jordan and the other presenter. I'm so sorry, I do not know his name. I wish I did, but no disrespect to him. I just am not too aware. Michael B. Jordan and the other presenter have the right to be upset, especially if they were not aware. However, we need to understand and educate ourselves.
These are the people who want to take a lecturing tone with you and me. They can't remember who was involved in all this, can't remember who had what disease, and yet these are the people telling you and me that we're the ones who are not informed, when they literally have no clue what or even who they're talking about. And these morons actually wonder why they're losing this argument so badly. They're trying to prove to themselves that they can still conjure magic, that if they merely say, he doesn't have to apologize and black people have no right to be offended, then that's going to be the end of it. But their magic ain't working. Because while they have their pathetic white media parlor tricks, we have reality on our side. They can tell the Negroes over in Britain or from the Caribbean or from Africa to shut up and just take it, and sadly they'll do it, as they've done for centuries. But when they try that with us, we don't bow down, we throw down. Okay, so those lying pieces of walking garbage are the problem. What might be the solution? First of all, take it out of these racist behinds. Start by banning the BBC from all American airwaves and platforms. Totally deplatform the bastards. And you can start with places like PBS. They rebroadcast a lot of BBC content. and they should be the first to drop them. Then satellite and cable services in the US should be next. Then streaming platforms like Netflix. Anyone who shows any content in the US from the BBC should be pressured to drop them. And these political whores calling themselves our representatives, they should also be pressured to publicly denounce the BBC and call this crap out. And as for the racist John Davidson's little vanity project movie, that should not be screened or exhibited at any theater in the US. This is where the black celebrities should come in. If some theater attempts to show that movie here, they should become a permanent art house theater because the big studio movies should not be given to them for exhibition ever again. All black actors from the US must refuse to ever attend the BAFTAs or to go on British television ever again, not just until there's a genuine apology or an expression of contrition, but permanently. The British don't have a movie industry or a TV industry. They're merely the backward auxiliary of Hollywood. They need American content and to have some feeble connection to the actual movie industry in the US. The US doesn't need an economic backwater and a societal toilet like Britain, and black actors damn sure don't need these reprobates. It's past time to show them that. And lastly, the cowardly Negroes in Britain have to understand their cowardice in collaboration with this act is the reason we had to delineate, and why delineation will only get stronger. You had scumbags over there putting on the tap dance shoes for massa and doing the most to defend this mess. I'd like to know, where are people like David Oyelowo at? That guy's been cosplaying as a foundational black American for 15 years now, and he also complains about how black actors are treated in Britain. So where's he at now? Or is it because he hopes to change how he is treated by the British studios that he's remaining quiet? The problem isn't that black Britons don't have the numbers. We've had gutter trash like Cynthia Erivo and Gina Yashir, along with others, who have had the nerve to disrespect us and to do that whole "we work harder, we have a superior culture" crap. We're more numerous than these black Britons are, and yet a lot of them have had no problem talking trash to us and being bold about it. And yet when white society spits in their faces, all of a sudden, they're full of excuses. We're too few in number. We've been pacified as a result of being immersed in British society. We've forgotten how to stand up for ourselves. That's a lie. They have no problem running their mouths at us. They have no problem getting on camera and attacking us. And they're not even doing it on their own behalf. They're doing it to protect white racists. The problem isn't a lack of numbers. It's a lack of nerve. Now the Afro-Britons can try to get mad at me for pointing out this pig simple truth, but the reality is, you know I'm right. So no, we're not giving any passes, and we're not letting any of this stuff fall down the memory hole. And these online scumbags who call themselves being apologists for this, we see you. And you're going to have to hang out with your little white supremacist anti-black pals because that's where you chose to be, and that's where you're going to stay. These anti-black racists can call themselves trying to push some envelope all they want. But as they're seeing, what's really going to happen is we are going to push back. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. David Williams, Hildman Gallo, Dean Ballantyne, Jacques Hargett, and Patty Hillman. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.